All right, all right. What's good? What's good? Oh yeah, shout out to the Kirby Cup. But we in this thing. Thank you all for watching. Or hope everybody's doing good in TV land. But you are now watching Juke Boy Sports Show. I am your host, Kyng Ralph. Solo dolo today. Tar couldn't make it, but we still gonna have a good show though. Kirby got my backup. You know what I mean? I feel like this light's really bright today. Hold up, let's get that one. Soften it up. No, not that one. Soften it up. Instead of getting softer. F it. It is what it is. But if you want to do a podcast like what you're watching, photo shoot, music video, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. And make sure you go like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Like the He Say, She Say channel on Facebook, He Say, She Say podcast coming back soon. Make sure you go subscribe at Juke Media, Joint Universal Creatives, but you can type in j.u.k. media, Juke Media, and subscribe. We're trying to get to 50 subscribers by the end of the month. And then make sure you go like the Facebook page, no more j.u.k. or Instagram, no more j.u.k. just straight Juke Sports Show on Instagram. Go subscribe, and you can follow me at TikTok, Twitch, Instagram at KYNGRALPH. Make sure you go and add an underscore for X or Twitter. I don't know why I'm messing up so much today. But we got a lot of good show to get into today. This one was an interesting topic. So Tua, who was formerly coached by Brian Flores before Mike McDaniel took over with the Dolphins, it's been rumored that there were a lot of things that were said. Now seems to be the case that these things were true. And so Tua has some things to say about Brian Flores, said he didn't speak life into him, talked down on him a bunch, as well as calling him a terrible person, even to that ilk. And so Brian Flores responds, and he says that there's some things that he needs to improve on to be better. The reason why he got into coaching is just necessarily didn't work out when it came to his relationship with Tua. And I feel like, not to make excuses, but I do feel like this is an example of when a coach goes into a situation expecting to have a certain level of control and things don't go their way. When you have a coach and a GM who are not on the same wavelength, things like this can happen, where I believe it was Justin Herbert was who Brian Flores wanted, but they drafted Tua instead. And so it's like, not to say that it's good to be, but at some point you do got to hold your player accountable. And I feel like these are the things that Brian Flores came up short on. You can hold someone accountable and let them know they need to play better while also speaking life into them. Let them know that you are a rookie. You're going to get better. And I'm going to talk about this later on when it comes to another sport. But let them know that the things they're doing, there's some good things, but there's also some bad things that they got to clean up. But talking down on them to the point where your coach can speak life into you or can take the life from you and be an energy vampire to a sense. And so I feel like this is an example of that. And it's good for Tua to come out and speak on it, be able to control his narrative, while also Brian Flores pretty much he validated how he felt, let him know that he needs to be better and do better. And now he's in another situation, learning from it, learning from Coach Mike Tomlin, who he left the Dolphins when he was let go by the Dolphins. He went to Pittsburgh, and now he's with Minnesota. Two good, very good head coaches in this league to learn from and be able to learn from your mistakes, fix them, and be able to, hopefully he gets another opportunity in the future. And so I was watching Raw Room. Shout out to the boys. and they were talking about Texas. The University of Texas has now moved from the Big 12 to SEC, but they think their schedule's a little marshmallow. They feel like it's a little, like my dad would say, cakey. It's a little, the schedule's a cake ass nigga if you catch my drift. But I think Georgia at 1, Texas comes into the season at number 4. And so I do understand where people are coming from and why people would feel like this, because you get Georgia's your best game, and you got them at Texas. You got a number 9 Michigan who has lost a lot of talent, so we'll see if they're even stay with that number 9 ranking. And then you get Arkansas, you get Texas A&M. I believe it's Texas A&M. Yeah, Texas A&M at 20. You get Oklahoma at 16, which all of this is subject to change by the time that the season actually happens and what goes on during the season. All of this is subject to change. You never know what. So they have 4 ranked opponents, and I agree. I do think that there is a level of easiness that is to this schedule where they don't get an LSU, they don't get a Florida, they don't get Mississippi State, they don't get Ole Miss. And I feel like there's some things on the schedule. I know you want to keep that Oklahoma rivalry going, so I don't really have a problem with them keeping them on the schedule. I like the fact that they took on a Michigan who is a highly ranked opponent from another division or another conference. And so, but I just feel like some of the non-scheduled or non-conference schedules, it's like you get Colorado State, UTSA. Oh, they do get Mississippi State. Mississippi State's just not ranked. But they didn't get a Ole Miss. They didn't get some of the better teams on the other side where they didn't get a LSU. So I just personally feel like they got a little bit, they took it easy on them with this year. And so I can see where it's coming from, but you never know. Like the same thing I said last week when it comes to these schedules. It's like based on, these are completely different teams to a certain degree. There's some teams that took a little bit of what they had last year, added to it, got some improvements through transfer portals, developments, and things of that such. But just because a team was ranked number 1 last year doesn't mean that they should be ranked number 9 this year when a bunch of players and their head coach goes to the draft. I mean, not draft, but goes to the NFL. And so we'll see what happens. I do think, just looking off the current schedule and projections, I do think the schedule's a little easy on Texas. But at the end of the day, you got to go out there and play football. Like, they didn't even get Bama, and I didn't even mention Bama, which last year they beat Bama. But it's neither here nor there. And so I've been doing position rankings. And at the end of the year, just before, probably the Wednesday before the season starts, I'll post my individual season rankings. And this changes from year to year. So you might see one player be 1 next year and 8 or not even on the list the next year based on the production that they give me or give us during the season. And so start off, I got the corners. I'm trying to think, do I have my DB, my safeties on here? Oops, I forgot to put the safeties. Well, we got to write that in later. But we're going to start off, and I normally go 10 all the way to 1. So I got Trent McDuffie, corner out of Kansas City. I feel like Trent McDuffie and how well he's produced, even though he is a smaller corner, I think they got him listed at like 5'9". And how well he's been playing gave them the flexibility and made them feel comfortable to the point where they were able to trade L'Jarius Sneed rather than pay him. And so he's been balling, very tough physical corner, although he's very undersized. And as a person that has to see him twice a year, he's been balling. And if you go through some of my lists, you'll see certain players and certain teams having multiple players on these lists, which is why and what makes them have that much better of a team. And so Trent McDuffie at 10, AJ Terrell at 9, Atlanta Falcons had a down year last year, but I still just feel like his talent is this, you just can't deny it. Same thing, undersized, physical, has a little bit more of a track record, which is why I'm going to give him the 9 spot over Trent. Although I do think that production wise, it's hard to argue Trent McDuffie out of the at least the top 6. But when it comes to the stature and size of some of these other guys, mixed with their talent level and production level, that's why I have certain people higher than others. But AJ Terrell had a little bit of a down year last year, but really good, still a really good, solid shutdown corner. I just would like to see him travel with the best receiver a little bit more, where I feel like 1 through 5, even maybe 1 through 6, can travel instead of just playing on their side of the field. And so at 8, we got Denzel Ward, another undersized but very, very talented corner for the Browns, partnering him with Myles Garrett, getting after the quarterback, having to get the ball out quicker. Now you got Denzel Ward to be able to shut down one side of the field. And I think that he balls out, man. He does his thing, stays pretty quiet, only really chirps when people get to chirping with him. And I like Denzel Ward, plus Ohio State. You know how I get down. And so at 7, I got Jair Alexander. Now, he's the opposite. He's going to talk. Even if he got beat, he's still not going to give credit to the other. And so Jair Alexander, Green Bay Packer, dealt with some injuries. But when he's on the field, he's a problem. Shut down, disrupts a lot in the passing game. And just a model of consistency for the most part. Charvarius Ward, I think, is very underrated corner for the San Francisco 49ers. When you play on the same defense of Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, and then all of the talent that's on that team on the offensive side of the ball too, I feel like a lot can happen where it comes to you can be overlooked. And so I feel like Charvarius Ward doesn't get the praise that he should. Over the last couple of years, he's been, I think the last 2 years combined, he's had like a 88 pass coverage grade, which puts him at top 5. Although I have him outside of the top 5, just based on the eye test plus the numbers and things of that such. I think he's a very good, underrated corner that most people don't necessarily think of right away, unless you just really know football. And so at 5, I got Jalen Johnson, corner for the Chicago Bears. Year after year, or at least the past 2 years, he showed that he's a phenomenal corner. Last year, you seen him in the Pro Bowl come up with a big stop in the Pro Bowl, although we're not playing in a physical game, but he got that stop. And then you heard throughout the training camp that he had days that Keenan Allen wasn't getting nothing. And we know how nice Keenan Allen is. Keenan Allen's going to go down as one of the greatest route runners of this game in history, honestly. But he's been able to shut him down. And so I think that going into this year, he's locked in, ready to go and lead that, be one of the leaders on that defense. And we'll see what happens with the Bears this year. And so at 4, I got Patrick Surtain Jr. or the second, however you want to go about it. But I think that he's someone, if it wasn't for how long Jalen Ramsey has been doing it at a high level and his versatility, I would probably have him a little higher. I could see him being – he has all of the talent and the tools to be the number 1 corner in the NFL, but I just feel like the hype behind certain people and them matching that hype and continuing to do such at a high level is why I have him so low. But I wouldn't have a problem with him being anywhere from 4 all the way to 1, even if you have him at 5. I could see, but I just think his track record, how long the couple of years he's been in the league, he's been a dog since he stepped in day 1. And so Jalen Ramsey at 3, like I mentioned before, his versatility, being able to play in the slot, out wide, play him at safety. You can play him in a nickel, dime, box, linebacker. He just has that versatility that you look for. But he's getting older to the point now. He's not so much as a shutdown corner, but he does have enough to disrupt the defense. And so at 2, I mentioned him before, but L'Jarius Sneed, I think a lot of teams, because of him, were going at Trent McDuffie, which is why he got so many opportunities. Where L'Jarius Sneed was going up against Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and doing numbers and doing his thing. We'll see what happens, because I think when you play in a defensive backfield that had that much talent, but also you have Chris Jones on the line who can get after the quarterback like that, I think that there's certain things that you're going to get opportunities that other corners may or may not get. And I feel like with him leaving the Chiefs and going to the Tennessee Titans, there's a possibility that he might not end up being the guy that we thought we might know him to be. And so I feel like over time, throughout the season, we're going to see if he's still that guy, and if it matters what scheme or defense that he's in and who's on the line getting after the quarterback, because the Tennessee just don't got nobody that's like Chris Jones. And no disrespect to them, but it just is what it is. And so at 1, I got the boys Sauce Gardner, New York Jets, corner, travels, can guard the best wide receiver on every team. They actually have a really good defensive back group where I think Playoff Football Focus got all 3 of their top 3 corners on the top 15 corners of the NFL. And so I think that group and what they're able to do, the way they're able to get after the quarterback, flying around on the ball, and then Sauce being able to lock down his side of the field and make it's a tough night for any wide receiver that goes up against him. He came in, I believe he was like his senior year he didn't give up a touchdown or have a no, I think his issue was that he grabbed a lot. He didn't give up a touchdown his senior year. Comes into the league and was able to catch up right away, talked his shit, was able to put up numbers and back it up. And he's been, I'm trying to see if he's been an all-pro the past 2 years. Sauce. I know he's been a Pro Bowler right away, but he is a 2-time All-Pro, and he's only been in the league for 2 years. So, buddy going crazy. And so now we're going to transfer over to the safeties. All right, top 10 safeties in the league. And so let's get straight into it. We got the Baltimore Ravens, Marcus Williams, who has had caught a little bit of the injury bug. He was playing 950 to 1,000 snaps every year with the Saints. Has had some issues where he's playing around 800 snaps with the Baltimore Ravens. But when he's on the field, he is effective. He is playing at a high level, flying around. Part of the reason why that Baltimore defense is so good, and playing alongside where your counterpart is another. He has the other person on the other side from him as far as one of the safeties is on this list as well. But he does numbers, tackle machine, plays really well in coverage, can come down and play in the box, and gives a lot of versatility between him and Kyle Hamilton. But Kyle Hamilton does outshine him a little bit, but he's still a very formidable safety. And then so I got Talanau Hufanga. I hope I didn't butcher his name, but shout out to him for making the list. Number 9, safety out of San Francisco. And like I mentioned before, when with Ward, it's when you go and look at what they do and how well they perform, they ball and they do their job at a high level. But when you start to play, when you play with a Nick Bosa, a Charvarius Ward, a Fred Warner, and Greenwood, all on the same defense, other people can start to, and then I didn't even mention like Hargrove, as well. It's like you can be easily overshadowed, and so being able to fly all over the field, a thumper in the defense and the run game, I think Hufanga does. He's a baller and he's a gamer, and so underrated, very underrated. But I got him at 9. At 8, I got Buda Baker, who reminds me a lot of Bob Sanders. Small in stature, but a missile on the football field. All and has a little bit of that Bob Sanders in him, where he's going to cause damage to the person he's hitting while also causing damage to himself because they're so much smaller in stature. How much and how hard they hit on the field can bring damage to where he's always going to end up with a stinger or separated shoulder or have some kind of injury in which it's going to keep him off the field. But when he's on the field, a problem on the field, Buda Baker is one of my favorites to watch. And I always have him on my Madden teams. And so at 7, I got Javon Holland. He's someone that I really enjoy his versatility. He came in right away, plays the safety position, can guard the slot in a dime or nickel situation, can fly sideline to sideline as a safety in a single high safety, plays zone, can guard man in short yardage situations. And I feel like once Mike McDaniels took over, they kind of went away from it. Although Brian Flores was hindering Tua's development, his defense that he ran, because he's a defensive coach, Javon Holland was able to flourish in that style and in that scheme. And so I would like to see him get back to the versatility that he has, specifically now that you got Jalen Ramsey, who has that same type of versatility in your defensive backfield. And so I'd like to he has all the talent to be a top 4 safety, but I just think since Mike McDaniel's scheme has taken over, the defense has changed to the point where they don't really use him to his strengths and all of his strengths. And so at 6, I got Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. Honey Badger doesn't give a damn about nothing. He does what he wants. Last year, he had his best year with the Saints, balling out all over the field. And I think he's one of the most versatile defensive guys we've had in a very long time. Kick returns, punt returns, being able to play in the box, being able to be a single high safety, being able to guard that nickel and that dime, in that nickel and dime package. I feel like the only negative and bad thing we've seen on his resume is how bad he got torched in that Super Bowl. He definitely was someone that you looked at and was like, you know what? I'm not going to talk shit to Tom Brady no more. I'm going to be quiet. When he leave, though, I'm going to be back talking again. And so Tyrann Mathieu at 6, getting older. So at this point, I don't expect him to get any higher on my lists. I probably see him. This will probably be the last time he be in this top 10 to keep it a buck with you, because I feel like some of these other guys are going to come in, do numbers, and he'll just slowly start to decline. But heck of a career. I don't really see him not being in the Hall of Fame. He's a future Hall of Famer one day, and phenomenal football player. But going into the top 5, I got Derwin James. He's another one of those guys that has a crazy versatility. Very big safety, has the size of a linebacker, but the fluidity and hips of a safety and cornerback. Someone that you can throw in and match up against like a Travis Kelce or like a very athletic tight end, can be a box safety, can play high in coverage and protect the deep ball. And so he's also one of my favorites. If only issue with him is injuries, like some of these guys is like with how hard you hit, it's hard to not have some kind of neck concussion, shoulder separation type of injury. And so at 4, I got Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's someone that he could very easily be the number 1 safety. Honestly, for me, if it wasn't for Kyle Hamilton, spoiler alert, being so versatile right away, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick would possibly be – he could be anywhere from 4 all the way to 1 if it wasn't for that. Because being traded from the Dolphins to the Steelers, he made an impact from day one. Being able to disrupt, cause turnovers, blitz, playing coverage. He's just been a baller since he's been in Pittsburgh. And having a T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, Patrick Queen on that team now, Joey Porter Jr., who I think when it comes to corners over the next couple of years is going to start to eke his name and put his name in that top 10. And they just got a good young defense. And I feel like Minkah Fitzpatrick brings it all together. He's the glue guy, and he's able to cause turnovers at a high level. And that's one of my favorite things about him. And so at 3, I got Antoine Whitfield Jr. He is someone that's like, he's just so small, but he plays so much bigger than what his size is. The ability to be a thumper, tackle, and come down protecting the run game, make a tackle in the open field, protect from the deep ball, play in coverage. I feel like he's such a very good safety, and unless you really truly know football, I don't feel like he gets talked about enough. But he's definitely my number 3, and only reason he's another person that these guys in the top 4 for me, I feel like they're interchangeable depending on what you like in your safety. I would like my safety to be a little taller. Nothing he can really do about that, but I just feel like the skill set that he has, versatility amongst all of these guys. The only reason I don't have him over Jesse Bates, who is my number 2, Jesse Bates, coming off of a year where in one game he had 3 interceptions and just continues the ball. He was with the Bengals, goes to the Falcons last year. Now he's in the same defensive backfield with A.J. Terrell. Now they just signed Justin Simmons, Matthew Judon as well to get after the quarterback. And so I think with Raheem Morris at the helm on the defensive side of the ball, that defense is going to be some problems. I expect him to be really good. He's always had a good defense and put numbers up. And so I think Jesse Bates, in the end, he's just not as versatile as Kyle Hamilton. I feel like Kyle Hamilton really does. He has no weakness, honestly. He can blitz. He can guard tight ends. He can guard running backs. He can guard corners, slot, outside, wide, single high, box safety. And I just feel like he doesn't really truly have a real hole in his game. And so for me, Kyle Hamilton is the best safety in football right now. And to go back through it, we got Marcus Williams at 10, Budda Baker, Javon Holland, Tyrann Mathieu, Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Antoine Winfield Jr., Jesse Bates, and Kyle Hamilton. And so with the time we got left, I didn't realize how much time I've been talking for, but we got some off-top topics. And like I mentioned before, I feel like with Caitlin Clark, I feel like too often we pay attention, excuse me, we pay attention to her points and assists. And I feel like in order for her and her team to be able to make noise in the playoffs, every possession matters. And so when you have a game when you score 20 points, 8 assists, but then you have 7 turnovers, I don't feel like her turnovers get talked about enough. Now, I also feel like, not to make this about Angel Reese, but I feel like the the conversations that get had specifically on social media, regardless of you think social media is real or not. I feel like the conversations that we have when it comes to Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, it's like, oh, Caitlin Clark, look at this. She'll get better with the turnovers. Where it's like with Angel Reese, they act as if this is her as at a finished product. And that's the part for me that I feel like we got to be able to call a spade a spade. I've compared her and I've seen her compared to Steph Curry. And that's the thing about Steph is in those big moments when he can protect the ball, not make sloppy passes or crazy shots in a moment where you don't really need it, those are the games in which they lose. And so in this instance, I would like to see Caitlin Clark get those turnovers down where at least she has a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So I don't think that it gets talked about enough because I do, in the end, she has her as a number 1 overall pick, Aaliyah Boston as a number 1 overall pick, and Kelsey Mitchell, who was a 2-time All-Star on that team. So she has talent on the team. So people got to stop acting like it's just her and a bunch of scrubs out there. Trust your teammates, make the right pass, and continue to keep playing your game, but also learn from the mistakes you make and bring down those turnovers. And so Jordan Mayave, I think I said it right, transfers from UNLV to USC because Caleb Williams went into the draft. And I forget the kid's name. That was his backup last year. He transfers to Boise State. And both of these two don't win the job, the starting job at the respective school that they're at. And so I've heard where Buddy that went to Boise State has talked about whether or not he's going to transfer again, or is he just going to wait his turn, work on his craft, work on his game. But Miller Moss named the starter for USC. And I just got to say, whoever hears this, whoever sees this, if you're in college, the grass is not always greener in the transfer portal. These are perfect examples of people leaving situations that were good, especially Jordan. Had a really good freshman season with UNLV. Maybe I'm a little bit of a homer, and that's why I wanted him to stay. But you leave to go to USC, and now you're stuck at least for another year behind Miller Moss. Where what do you do in this instance? Do you try to transfer, or do you work on your craft under Lincoln Riley, who was a great offensive mind, and then see what you can do next year? And I think that these are situations and conversations that players in college got to have and be honest with themselves, where we're not just jumping to situation to situation. Sometimes a coach wants to see in guys that if you're the quarterback, it's a lot of trust as a receiver that I have to have in you, or just as a coach that we have to have in you, that when things get rough, you're not going to quit and jump ship. And so the grass is not always greener, guys. Just remember that. And so backyard sports is being brought back. So it leads me to ask, what games would you like to see rebooted? And hold up real quick. And immediately I jumped to the NFL streets. I mean, not NFL street, but just street in general. I feel like a game like Max Payne would be dope as well. I would like to see the street franchise come back if we're going to bring back the backyard sports, because NFL Street was cold. NBA Street had their sequels and was really good games. Even FIFA Street was dope. Max Payne is a game I would love to see rebooted or remastered, and makes me wonder, like, we got NCAA back, we're getting backyard sports back. Let's see what else. Maybe hopefully we can get NCAA basketball. That would be dope. March Madness would be a cold game. And let's see, what do I have left before we got to get out of here? Um, this is one that I talked about this a week or two ago, and I'm getting tired of it, yo. Like maybe it's just because I'm older and I lived through both, so now I'm able to see. But I just see so many young people trying to act like yes, players were not as athletic as Michael Jordan in his era, but to act as if everybody wasn't as skilled as him, I just feel like that's false. There's now, if you're gonna say the statement of the game is more skilled now versus the skill level of the players as a general statement, I get it. But to say that Mike was the only player with skill is just false. That's cap. You can go through every team had at least 1 to 3 players that were good and skilled. If we play with the Pistons, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars. You go to the Heat, they had Rex Chapman, Tim Hardaway. You go through the Pacers, you had Mark Jackson, Reggie Miller, Chris Mullin. You go through teams like the Hornets, Kendall Gill, Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, like Muggsy Bogues, as small as he was, leading the league in steals for a couple years. Kevin Johnson, Charles Barkley, Cedric Sabalas, Eddie Jones, Nick Van Exel. Like I can go through so many players that played in the 90s and late 80s that were skilled at what they did, but they just weren't Michael Jordan. And I feel like if you're going to say like, all right, Michael Jordan was able to put his skill with his athleticism, which we had not seen until Mike, but to just make it seem like it was Mike and a bunch of scrubs and plumbers is crazy, because it's like at one point I was like, all right, so the 60s, 50s and 60s, they were guys that had day jobs and then played in the league. Where the 90s, that was their job. They were making money solely as basketball players. And so I hate this narrative. And then it's like, to go back to the statement, Anthony Edwards goes on to say that he didn't really watch basketball back then, but Michael Jordan was the only one that was skilled during that time. So to say that you didn't watch, but then have an opinion based on something you didn't watch just sounds wild. And then Magic Johnson comes back and says that he doesn't respond to people who haven't won championships while also responding to people who haven't won championships is crazy. And so I hate this whole divide between the young and the old. And we got to get to a point where, as a person, that I learned a lot from being around older people. I always had older friends. I've always dated older women. I've always hung out with my dad and his friends, my mom and their friends. And there's so much game that you can soak up just from being around people that are older than you and see life in a way that which your peers and people of your age group do not. And I feel like part of the way, excuse me, that the game has got to is because there are no vets on a lot of teams. Honestly, a lot of bad teams go and look at who their vet is. Their vet is probably someone that's been in the league for 5 years. Where a team full of young people, there's nobody that's been in the league 10 years, that's been through the change in the eras, been through different coaches, has real life experiences, and can give game to people in a manner that can help grow the team, the game, and the individuals. And that's the part for me that I hate hearing it, because it's just creates a bigger and bigger divide in the game, in which I love. But I got to get out of here. I went over on time. Man, give me some water. But make sure you go and subscribe, comment, share on all the socials, like the He Say, She Say channel on Facebook. He Say, She Say podcast coming back soon. Make sure you go subscribe at Joint Universal Creatives or Juke Media on YouTube. We're trying to run it up to 50 subscribers by the end of the month. You can follow me at KYNGRALPH at TikTok, Twitch, Instagram at an _ for X or Twitter. And I'm out of here. And like I always say, even though they